morning to you, and welcome to another episode of Hub Talk, where we talk about everything and anything related to marketing. I'm Kanishka, I'm the marketing department lead at Creative Hub. So, I have Kavishant with me today, the performance marketing lead at Creative Hub. Hi, Kavishant, good morning to you.
Hi, Kani. A very good morning to you.
Yes. So in our previous episode, right, one of our listeners actually requested us to talk about products. So here we are to talk about products, right? So when you talk about products, we say as a marketer, or we say if you are someone from development who does UI UX, products might not be a new thing to you. When I say products, it could be even tools, right? We say starting from Slack to Jira to ClickUp, we every day we use a bunch of tools, right? So to talk about these products, right, we have someone special joining us today. So we have Sean, the lead digital strategist at Creative Hub. Hi, Sean. Good morning to you.
Hi, Kanishka. Good morning.
Yes. So, like I said, when we're talking about products, right? So, something that you might be wondering, right? You might have not even thought about it, right? How do they actually design and develop these products, right? What might have been, running in their head when they were designing, right? How did they come up with this feature, right? So, to talk about those, I like to invite Sean, right? How do you define a product, right? People might define products in different ways, right? In your experience, in your expertise working with products, how would you define a product?
Yeah. So first of all, guys, thank you for having me today. And yeah, I mean, you kind of started off with a good question before we really talk about product design and the process of product design and things like that. We really need to understand what is a product first of all. So I mean, the simplest definition of a product, right, is I mean, if you Google it, right, what Google would say a product is, right, is it's any object or system, right? So it can be, I mean, if you take, okay, let's say, my mouse over here, that's a product, right? You take the mug that you, or your cup that you drink your tea or coffee in every day, that is also a product, right? But in the terms of say like specifically what we are talking about in marketing and I software IT, right? When we say product, right, that definition just not, it doesn't just stop there, right? So what we marketers consider as a product is any system, right? Usually we are talking about systems, we're talking about softwares, right? So any system that is used to fulfill a desire of a customer or a user, right? To fulfill a desire or to solve a problem, right? So I mean, that is the simplest definition of a product, right?
Correct, correct. So, like to add into that, Sean, we say now we have a problem in we say managing our products, managing our projects, right?
Mm,
So, a project manager will come up suggest different tools. It could be ClickUp, it could be
yeah.
Jira. So, why they suggest those tools or those products is basically there is a problem, right?
Mm,
Managing the projects is a problem, right? So, I
mm,
think that's how people come up with these different tools or different
yeah.
different products to solve different problems that we have.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, there's always at the core of any product, there is some sort of a problem that we are trying to solve as a user, right? As a rather product designer, right? There is some sort of a problem that we are trying to solve. Yeah.
Correct, correct.
So like very simply, product. Like when you talk about product, right, the other the flip side of that is you also have services, right? So you also have to understand, okay, if that is the definition of a product, then what is a service, right? So a service is usually is it's tied to a human being, right? It's tied to an individual or individuals, right? So the beauty of a product is like when you take a service, right, it's because the output, right, or the value that the customer get is tied to an individual. Individuals aren't, like, by human nature we are not consistent, right? I mean, you can have someone who does the job well. You can, switch that. You can, that's usually the problem that any client
Correct.
has. They hate it
Yes.
when team members change and things like. Why is because as a service provider, right, your output can change if an individual changes,
Hmm.
right? But that's not how it is with product, right? Product is very straightforward, right? You get a particular, say, from a product, right? You even a product offers a service, right? But a product's usually a product's output is consistent over time, right? It gets better, right? Yes, there are bugs, there might be downtimes and things like that, but usually a product, you know what to expect,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That is why this whole concept of SaaS, right, software as a service, is basically, like, it's a successful concept. For example, if you take Salesforce, right, that is one of the first SaaS products in the world, and it happens to be one of the largest CRMs, right?
Yeah.
It's an enterprise application, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, right, it has grown so large, right, because of this simple concept, right? You
Correct.
know what to expect from it, right?
Yeah,
So
so
that is.
to add into that, also on funny story, like you said, right? Teams change, right? Even
Hmm,
recently, we also face kind of the same situation, like where people move on, right? New people come in, but then end of the day, that the tool will remain the same sometimes, or we might
hmm,
even go for an upgrade. Even from a client's point of view, right? If you change a team member, that would be a problem sometimes. But if you change a tool or if you upgrade from a client's perspective, I don't think that would be a problem. It will add more value to the client or the customers that we are working with. I mean, even
correct, correct.
Kavishant, right? I think Kavishant recently faced the same issue. But then upgrading to a different tool or different product, I think even from your perspective, Kavishant, I mean, as a performance marketing lead, might be working with a lot of tools, right? In your point of view, how do you address it, right? Changing a team member and upgrading to a new product.
Yeah, so as you said, very recently we had that experience, right? Because we have been training an individual for a time period, right? And client at the end of the day getting comfortable with that person. But when we are offering a service and there is a human person involved in it, right? There would be a lot of pressure onto that particular area, right? Because if that individual leaves or tries to, definitely yes, alternatives, there would be another person coming in, right? There would be a training session needs to be done, and then again getting in with client communication and whatnot.
Correct.
But it has never been a case with a tool, right? Because yes, it takes to for us to adapt to it, right? And to get a hook of it, right? But ideally, when it comes to a tool, everyone is comfortable with, right? It comes becomes a universal perspective, right? Where everyone could have a what we call a session with it, rather than a individual coming into play and whatnot.
Correct, correct, correct. So, like when we were talking, a key term that we actually discussed was product design, right? When Sean was talking about products, so this product design is something that came into discussion. Sean, in your point of view, how would you really explain or describe what product design
Hmm.
is?
Yeah, I mean, so again, like, we've understood like what product is, right? So if I mean, see, the thing about product design is, right. First of all, like, if you understand what is design, right? I mean, the blanket term of design usually means, using, let's say, colors, elements, and things like that to create something visually appealing. Yeah,
Correct.
I mean, that's the blanket term of design. If you even search online, that's usually the answer you're going to get, right? But see, product design, because see, like I said, product is something that is not just about, say, it's not simply about how something looks, right? Product is something that is more to do with functionality, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, right, for products, we don't usually refer to, let's say, the people as customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You call them users, right?
Users, right.
Why is that? Because they use your product, right? They are there because your product has a functionality that solves their problem, right? So if product is about functionality, right, and it's not simply about say product design, then is not simply just about how something looks but how it works,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So therefore, right, product design is how a product is supposed to work, right? That is the process. Product design, right, is a process through which, let's say, product designers use, right, to blend user needs with business objectives, right?
Correct, correct.
Business goals. So I mean, there's like a key component there, right? uh like I said, it's how, number one is, it's how it works, right? Designing how a product is supposed to work, right? uh but this is where a lot of people go wrong, right? You're designing how a product is supposed to work to blend, to basically you to satisfy a user's need, right? That is something that, lot that's what essentially, let's say, a UI UX designer would do, right? Is how they can satisfy a user's, need, right? But the other side of it is how a product can satisfy business goals, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you can design a really great product, it can have an amazing, visual interface, it can have a really good experience, but it has to satisfy a business goal, otherwise product cannot exist, right? If
Correct.
a business is not generating revenue through the product, right? If users are not, let's say, if you users might be having value, but if that is not, let's say, generating some form of revenue or some form of growth, right, a product cannot exist, right? So that is where, so product design is about blending these two things, right?
Right, right.
User experience and business goals, right? So bringing these two things together is what a product designer does, right? So I mean, in my experience, right, so to tell you the truth, right, no, for example, right, I know a little bit about, a thing or two about design and things, right? The tools and all, but say when it comes to, so to tell you, so the background is, my background, right? I mean, I work on our product at Creative Hub, right? Marketrix, right? So which is a sales engagement platform, right? So so with Marketrix, right, so when we were designing, the whole the functionality and how it should look and all those things, right? um you found yourself, it's very little to do with actual design, right? Rather it is to do with understanding a user. It's how a person would, in what context, what would their environment be when they're using, are they using, okay, it's quite simply starting with, are they going to use this on, let's say, a desktop, are they going to use this on a mobile, right? Are they going to be at home, are they going to be at work, what would be the devices they would have, would they have, let's say, would they be using headphones, right? What would be their internet connection speeds like, depending on where they are, like all those things, right? So there's a lot of basically putting yourself, let's say, as a user, putting yourself in, actually, into their shoes and being, in that situation, right?
Correct, correct.
Because when you sort of put yourself into that situation, you understand a lot of the problems, a lot of the issues that a user might face, right?
Right, right.
um,
So end of the day, I think the essence that I can take from what you basically told, right?
mm,
From a user's point of view, what's the whole point of having a product if you can't use it, right?
correct,
And basically from a business point of view, what's the whole point of having a product if it doesn't, generate any revenue or bring any
exactly,
value to the business, right?
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the another, like, if I just pull up, this thing on my screen also, what I found yesterday. So let me just open it up. Yeah. So these were what I just, found yesterday. So the difference between UI and UX, right?
Right.
So like I said, it's not just about design, right? Product design. So for example, this mug, right? It's not just about design, right? It's about how it's going to work as well. So quite simple
Right.
example is, this mug looks very aesthetic, but I mean, functionally, you you can see the problem, right? Quite a popular meme as well, right? Interesting thing is, when it comes to like product, right? It's so something that I want to reference is, we were talking a lot about, say, design, and how a product is designed and things like that. But the notion of, let's say, the products that we use today, the tools, the softwares, the social platforms that we use today, um, the standout, I mean, the thing that these are all developed around is this concept of habit, right?
Correct.
Making something a habit, right? Now, quite simply, Instagram. Okay, Instagram is a habit, right? We always want to open it. For some people, okay, LinkedIn might be a habit, right?
Right.
Not just okay, like all of us have like, even not related to products, but we all have habits. We have things like habits, meaning something that we do repetitively, right? We do it on repeat to a point where it is hardwired into our system to full, like, to do that action without even knowing it, right? So
Right. Correct.
subconsciously, like, some people, for example, you bite your nails, right? Which you don't realize you're doing it, right? It's just a spontaneous reaction. There's a trigger in your mind. Okay, let's say you're nervous, right? And your
Yeah.
reaction to that is to bite your nails, right? That's a habit, right?
Correct.
So product designers have sort of understood that, okay, if we can make our product, if we can kind of understand psychology, right? User psychology, understand how people think and how people use our product, we can actually make it a habit. We can make using our product a habit for them, right? For
Correct.
users, right? Now you might argue, okay, is this actually ethical, right? You're basically coaxing people to I mean, if you watched like say these on Netflix, you have like The Social Dilemma. If you watch that, things like that, you'd see how companies like Facebook, Google, and all have designed their solutions in a way that users get addicted, right? The moment you don't, let's say, you don't use Facebook for, let's say, X number of hours or days, it starts popping notifications at you, right?
Right.
Same with, let's say, Instagram, right? So on that, like a really like I was saying, product designers have basically, now what you do in the modern world is, you try and capitalize on this notion of habit, right? So
Right. Right.
a book that I actually want to reference on this, that actually speaks very like quite in detail about product this whole habit forming product design is Hooked, right? So it's a really good book, which I've personally was able to read, right? So Hooked, essentially, basically Hooked, right, by Nir Ayal. So how to build habit forming products, right? So he essentially talks about what I just mentioned, right? How your product can be a habit, right? So that involves understanding your users to a very in-depth level, a great degree, right?
Right.
um, and it has like a lot of good examples as well, right? So I mean, this Hooked, it basically talks about how you this how habits are formed, right? So they introduce this thing called the Hooked model, right, as you can see, right? What it essentially means here, right? If you take any habit, right, it can be broken down into just four stages, right? Four simple stages, which is a trigger, a action, right, a reward, and an investment. Okay, so like, what do I mean by trigger? So when I say trigger, right, so trigger, there are two kinds of triggers. You have internal triggers and you have external triggers, right?
Right.
So what I mean by an internal trigger is, something that manifests, right, within me. Okay, something that it's not anything in the external environment around the user has not changed, but it's something within the user. It's a thought, or it can be a feeling, right? For
It's
example,
basically
okay,
something that triggers within you, right?
exactly. Now, for example, if you take Instagram, right, Now Instagram and YouTube even, right? The internal trigger that they are capitalizing off is boredom, right? When you're bored is when you what you call most tend to, you open your Instagram, you check your WhatsApp, is when you're bored, right? So that's an internal trigger, right? External trigger is, obviously something that basically gets the user to the product, right? So it can be like a notification popping up on the screen, right? It can be, let's say, an advertisement that I saw. Those are external triggers,
Like on
right?
LinkedIn, right? You get a notification saying this person has viewed your profile, and you just go back
Exactly.
and see whether who actually opened or viewed your profile.
Exactly. So that is essentially, I mean, the triggers, right? So external triggers are, of course, quite easy to prompt and things like that. But it's this concept of understanding internal triggers that's really about how well you can understand your user, right? What they feel, right? And then the next thing is the action, right? So when this trigger is there, right, the next thing the user has to do is take an action, right? So again, this is where product designers also go to the extent of thinking, okay, how can I make this action easier, right?
Right.
I mean, if you go back to the process of, let's say, um, okay, let's say you arrive home late, okay, and you just think about the process, like you've had a late Friday night and you come home, and let's say you are not quite steady, okay, and you have your, let's say, your bag in one hand, right? You have, let's say, a laptop bag in the other hand, and now you're fidgeting around, to find your door key or something, and your door key has, like, five different keys on it, and you're figuring out how to kind of open it, right?
Talking from experience, yeah.
Maybe I'm not saying yes, but maybe, right? So let's say, I mean, if you just picture that situation, right? um the action, right? I mean, the trigger, of course, is quite straightforward, but the action of trying to just open the door is quite complex, right,
Correct.
given that situation. So obviously, the person who designed that door has not taken into account, okay, how someone in this state is going to do this, right? Who is going to open this door, right? But you would have seen, let's say, there's very there's, you would have seen the normal, key that you can, just open it, right? But now you have doors where, you just, what do you call, you have the key card, right? So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of, that key card, right? You flash that key card, and then it unlocks, right? So that is the action, right? So what I'm trying to get at is, as product designers, we also see, right, the trigger is there, that we can influence that trigger, and sometimes not. But when the action can be taken, how can it be made as simple as possible for the user? Users don't like to put effort, right? You need to make it as simple as possible for them to take that action,
Yeah.
right? And the next is the reward, right? So this is also it's actually variable reward, right? So I'll explain why that is, right? So now, obviously, when you take an action, you need to get something back. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, why would you take that action, right? So this is a popular concept, in gaming, right?
Right.
And what we term as gamification, right? So in gaming also, when you let's say, I think the most popular games, among the Gen Zs, millennials, you've heard of, like, PUBG and all those things, right? So when a player enters into these, I'm of course more of a COD era kind of person, but when you enter into these games, and when you start playing, um, the what do you call, the player, they reward you, right, with
Right.
points, right? So you take an action, they reward you, right? Let's say, when you're playing mobile games, right, they tell you to, let's say, do a certain action, right, and they'll reward you with coins and things like that, right? In the same way, products do the same thing, right? Take an action, right, and we will give you, let's say, a 30% discount on your next subscription, right? Let's say, when you and this reward doesn't need to be something monetary as well, right? It can be the simplest thing of acknowledging you and basically crediting you for something that you have not really done much in. Let's say they want, let's say in a product, they want you to, you have entered into a new, let's say a project management tool, and they want you to create your workspace, right? And they'll, once you create that workspace, you've taken the action, you've created your new workspace and named it, and then you'll have this, I think ClickUp does this, it has this all confetti
Obviously.
and thing like,
Correct. Yeah.
congratulations, you've opened your new workspace. Like, I mean, it's not a big deal, you just
It's a
opened a
very minor
workspace.
thing, but they
It's
appreciate you
very
for that.
minor, exactly, it's a very minor thing, but they show appreciation, they make you feel rewarded, right?
Correct.
So that is what pushes me as a user to continue on, right? So why it is variable reward is, okay, let's assume that I mean, you keep doing this over and over again, and at one point, you get to a point where you know what the reward is going to be, right?
Correct.
So at that point, the value of the reward starts to go down, right? So let's say, I mean, every day you do something good, right? If you think back to as a kid, right, if you were doing something good and your parent would give you a certain amount, let's say they reward you with $5, right? And you, every time you do something good, right, at some point, okay, it's going to be this $5 every time, right? No matter what I do or whatnot, I'm still going to get this $5. So you can expect it, you know what you're going to get, right? So the thrill of getting that is going to reduce over time. But let's say you did something, and sometimes you suddenly get $8, sometimes it's just $2, sometimes it's $15, right? So variability, right, creates that, it sustains the thrill,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So
Right.
that is also again where designers, right, product designers also leverage on this concept of not like you rewarding, but keeping the reward variable. It always changes, you do not know what to expect, right?
Correct.
So which brings me to the final thing, which is investment, right? So investment, as in you invest yourself, like as a user, the more time, or as a product designer, sorry, as a product designer, the more time I can get my user to invest themselves into the product, right, the less likely they are to leave it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like what I mean by that is, as a user, I value my time,
Hmm.
right? And if again, right, again, referencing ClickUp again, right? So ClickUp, in their sign up process, they will ask you, like before they even ask your let's say your card details, I can't remember if they ask your card details, but before they ask any of that information, they will ask you to create your workspace, set a theme color, invite your team members, right? And many more other steps, interesting steps, right? And by the time you have come to the point where they, okay, now set up your, now give us your email, give us your
Yeah.
password, what we all don't like to do, by that time you have already invested yourself into the product, you've
Hmm.
already set up your workspace, you've put a theme color to it, and you've invited people, and
Yeah.
you've put too much time, you've invested too much to give up now,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So
You don't
anyway,
feel
like
like
this is
going back again after you invest so
exactly, I
much
mean,
time.
after,
Yeah.
like, if you were to ask that at the very start, you'd be like, and you'll move on, right? You'd go
Correct.
to
Correct.
some other product, or but after having gone down that route, it, okay, fine, I've anyway, I've done all this stuff, just giving my email address and password is not a big deal at this point, right?
Yeah.
So that is essentially the concept of this whole hooked model that they talk about, right? So I mean, if you are able to read this book, it's a very it's very captivating, I would say, right? It really opens your eyes into some of the stuff that you use in even daily life, you didn't realize it. But that's the beauty of it, until, like, that's the beauty of habits, right? You don't know it's a habit until someone tells you, right? You have a habit, it can be a good habit, it can be a bad habit. But you don't realize it's a habit until sometimes it's pointed out to you, right? um, I wanted to, like, reference just one more thing here also. That is, so this is another a very good example of a habit forming product, which is right in front of you right now, the keyboard that you use, right? So I'm not sure if you know, but so what the keyboard layout that we all see today is called the QWERTY layout of the keyboard, right? That is why it's called QWERTY, right? That is the first what do you call, the first six letters, right, is spelled out as QWERTY, right? So this interesting fact is, so this QWERTY keyboard layout, I think it was designed back in the 1890s, right, for typewriters, right? So the first typewriters came with this, QWERTY layout, right? But back then, depending on the company that manufactured the typewriter, you will have different layouts, right? The layouts were not one consistent layout, right? But it just so happened that the company that manufactured their typewriters with the QWERTY layout was the most popular,
Right.
right? It was the most what do you call, popular, the most selling, I would say, right? So this QWERTY layout happened to be, the most selling, and most people used it, right? But see, what happened there is, just like Apple today, they were able to kind of create an ecosystem, or rather a cult, I would say, around this layout, right? Because
Right.
the keyboard, when you type, right, to be able to type, especially on a typewriter, you get used to the layout, right? Now, let's say I want to buy a new typewriter, right? Or I want to buy, let's say, a new laptop. But the new laptop, let's say, no matter how great the brand is, no matter how good it looks,
Yeah.
if the layout of the keyboard is different, imagine me having to break that habit of this QWERTY layout and switch to a different keyboard
Different
layout,
keyboard. Correct.
right?
Right.
So
Yes.
so that, again, that's the beauty of habits, right? Breaking a habit is difficult. For a new product to come in and break an old habit is very difficult, right? You have to invest tons of, basically cash for you to be able to break the habit of a old product, right? So this is essentially what this company did, right? And in the end, the other typewriter manufacturers realized that, okay, most of the market is used to this. Because of that, we need to adapt this layout also. So everyone, basically, like, everyone adopted the QWERTY keyboard layout, right? So this is a habit, right? So if Apple were to come in with their new MacBook, Apple being Apple, maybe they could, break this habit. Maybe they could, have their own keyboard layout, because Apple is Apple, right? And a user would force themselves to, what do you call, adapt to this layout. The thing there that happens then is, if an Apple user is used to, let's say, a new keyboard layout, they can't use any other product. So Apple has another way to, lock their users into their ecosystem, right? So yeah,
Correct.
I mean, these just some interesting examples, Kani.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So I think, Shanu, we discuss about something which is very important, right? Habit forming products. Right? So if you are someone from a startup, or if you're someone who's looking into developing your own product, this is something that you really have to keep in mind, right? So another thing, since the just talking about products, right, and also marketing, how can basically marketing come into place, right? So if you are a person from a startup, or a person from a marketing or a design team, some you might have faced conflicts, right? When it comes to designing, or developing the products, right? You might have made mistakes, right, when designing or developing these products, right? So one main reason could be, you try to make your product appeal to your target audience, right? Due to different reasons, right? You might not have understood the real need or the want of your particular user or your customers, right? So we'd like to talk more on this topic at our next episode, right? What are the mistakes that the designers or the marketers they do when it comes to products, right? And a lot more very important areas when it comes to products, right? So I hope that you all learned something new. So if in the meantime, if like last time, right, so if you have anything other than product, we say it could be about different marketing strategies even, right? If you want us to talk more on that area, you can just let us know in the comment section below. So thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for joining, and basically educating us about products, different books you quoted, Hooked, right? That's something that we also recommend our listeners to read, where you will be able to get a really good understanding about products. Thank you, Sean, once again. So we look forward to meet you guys with our next episode with another very interesting topic. Thank you,
Thanks, Kani.
guys.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
See
you.
you
See
guys.